What would you have done though if he had said, that's just my mom?
You can't do those things and focus on anxiety at the same time.
Right. I think it's so misunderstood. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about everything that has to do with developing femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I'm Cherry Lynn, and I'm here with my mom, Dixie Andel Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So we're doing something a little different today. Welcome to our very, very first ever Monday mini series. We're doing a Q&A every Monday on our channel, something really short and quick from the audience. Really quick before we jump into the first one, if you have a question for us that you would like us to answer on a mini Monday Q&A, send your question to cherryqui@fascinatingwomanhood.com, or you can Instagram us. If you're following us on Instagram, send us a private message, or you can drop it down below here if you want. If it's not too private, you can drop it in a comment, and we will select your question for Mini Monday. So what we're doing in these mini series is that we're taking a question, like we said earlier, from the audience, and we're just quickly addressing what we think that person can do. You know, we get so many questions and we're constantly answering them privately, but we thought, why not answer some of them on our channel, because there might be others out there that have a similar question that might benefit from these answers.
Keep in mind, ladies, that we'll answer these as best we can, but a lot of times we have very limited information as to your issue. If we knew more background, it would be obviously, we could do a more complete answer, but we're going to answer these with the limited information that we have on your particular issue.
Yeah, we obviously don't know any of these people. They're absolute strangers. Right. And when you give us these stories, there's only so much detail we can go into, but perhaps even just some general advice is helpful for our ladies. Okay, so we're going to jump into the first one. Okay. Today's subject is boundaries. Boundary setting is a big topic. And I think we could probably we did a video on this, so you can watch that, we can attach it, but I think we could probably do even another video on it, because there's so many parts that I think we even missed in the first one, but it helps to have a specific story. So here's the story that we had sent to us. My husband drinks for special occasions and purposely gets as drunk as possible. He also smokes weed. He gave it up for a few months, but then he tends to go back into it again. He doesn't think he's addicted, because when he wants to stop, he does, but he always wants to smoke. I have a hard time with boundaries. He has a hard time whenever I set boundaries. I'm overwhelmed. He says he wants me to figure it all out. He says he wants me to act like he doesn't know anything, but he says he wants us to collaborate on everything. I'm learning that his words aren't his actual feelings, so I'm learning to decipher what he says, especially in the moment. He asked me 1,000 meaningless questions all day. There's a lot of parts to that. I feel like it could there's so many questions that I have for this person, but since we don't have that ability, we'll just
that's all we have. Yeah,
take it as we have it and go from there. So what do you think?
Well, a lot of people confuse boundaries with wanting people to do what you want them to do. They're not exactly the same thing. People who have trouble with boundaries often are people who don't have the best self-esteem that they wish they had. It doesn't mean it's horrible, but it means they're maybe underconfident, undersure, because people with good boundaries don't put up with other people trampling on them. Now, you could say, I don't want him to drink. I don't want him to smoke. I don't want him to smoke weed. A lot of people would understand that, but the question you have to ask yourself is, am I willing to, give up on the relationship? How important is this to me? Is this a deal breaker? Because you cannot change another person. If you say your boundary is he can't drink at all or to excess and no weed, if that's what you say is your boundary, you may lose your relationship. You have to decide what I can tolerate.
What would be an example of this guy getting really drunk? Let's just say he's really drunk, because she did bring this up first. He gets drunk all the time, or he gets drunk on special occasions. So let's say you got a special occasion come up. He's going to follow this pattern. What can she do? What is a boundary just for that one specific act?
For example, if he gets drunk and he's verbally or whatever kind of abusive to her and not the real him, she can decide, okay, I know he's going to do this. She can go somewhere else and be somewhere else. and just leave, physically remove herself and say, I'm not going to be around him. Or she can tell him, if when you do this, just to let you know, I'm going to do this because I'm not willing to put up with the aftermath of this. That's the boundary. It's not reasonable for her to say, you cannot go and do this. That's too much parent-child. She can say what she will do, what she will put up with it. If she cannot put up with it, she can say, I'm going to go and stay with my sister overnight until you are more yourself again. Whatever it is she's going to do, she can say, I'm not going to participate in this. I'm not going to expose myself to this.
What if it were a situation where she had children and like it's a parenting thing where they're parenting their children at this special occasion? Let's say it's Christmas. You can't necessarily say, well, at Christmas, I'm going to take the kids away from you on Christmas Eve. Or can you?
Then he's drunk?
Yeah.
Well, then you get into the thing of, are you exposing your children to somebody who's drunk, and how do you protect them? Because then that becomes an issue too, where I know, working with Bob all these years, Division of Family Services will can and do sometimes take your children away if they feel like you, who are the responsible parent, do not protect your children enough from the irresponsible one. That can be an issue. That she may not have children, it may not be an issue at all, but boundaries have to be reasonable and taken into account that you cannot change another person. You can say what you will and won't put up with. Like you could say, for example, I'm not going to put up with my husband being messy ever. Well, you can do that, but you're probably going to lose your marriage. Is that a boundary that you want to set? Is that reasonable? No. Most people would say, no, that's not really fair, because it's his house as well as yours. So these boundaries that she's talking about, she can protect her own physical person, her own emotional welfare by saying, as long as you're going to do that, I'm doing this.
So my takeaway from this is, you need to decide first and foremost what I'm willing to put up with. That's number one. I'm not going to put up with this because it's not healthy. It's toxic. It's dangerous, whatever it is that it may be happening.
And if you have children, it's even more dangerous.
In this situation, it sounds like it's a little bit more severe. And this is something where boundaries are needed. Mm-hmm. So decide that. I will not put up with, I'm fine with him having a few drinks or something, but I won't put up with the drunkenness. I won't put up with the drunkenness and the name calling or whatever it ends up spiraling into. So therefore, you have made that commitment to yourself. And I think that's probably the hardest part about boundaries, is making that commitment to yourself and saying, I'm not doing this.
Bob has always had excellent boundaries. And what happens is, because I'm human, I make mistakes like everybody. And if I ever say something that hurts his feelings, he'll tell me right on the spot. Like, basically, he's not putting up with that. He'll either, that really hurt my feelings. And I always recognize it and really apologize, but he doesn't just swallow it.
He subconsciously knows, or maybe consciously, maybe a little bit of both, knows what he's willing to put up with and what he's not. And in this situation, she has not decided what she's willing to put up with and what she hasn't. It sounds like. And
she wants him to change, but Bob Bob does not put up with it.
But he's a man and this is a woman. I think women struggle a little bit with boundaries more because we're sensitive.
And because we're relationship oriented, we don't want to hurt the relationship.
Right. What I'm hearing is this takeaway of deciding the boundary first. Then, if you can, have a plan in place for what's going to happen when that boundary is crossed. So what is this plan for her? Is it, like you mentioned, leaving? Is it physically removing yourself? Is it removing yourself from the room and not necessarily the house? There's a lot of different boundaries.
When she said he asked her all these meaningless questions, is he drunk or high when he does that? Or is he normal? And she didn't really say. She can say ahead of time when things are normal, okay, when this happens, this is really uncomfortable with me. I'm not willing to put up with it. So if you do this, just be aware I'm going to do this.
Right. So she could tell him her plan as well.
I'm not going to, because this does this to me, you're insulting to me, whatever it is. I'm going to be doing this.
Right.
In teaching good boundaries, we're teaching ladies what they can do to set reasonable boundaries, not saying you cannot throw your dirty socks on the floor. That's mothering. Boundaries where it hurts your personal heart, where if he's constantly criticizing you, you have a right to set that kind of a boundary. If you feel like your emotional well-being is at threat, you have a right to set those boundaries. So how do you do it? You do it when, my preferred thing is to do it when things are great between you and things are calm. I noticed this happening, and I just want you to know that when you have a right to drink, you have a right to smoke or whatever, you accept him at face value, but that is so uncomfortable for me, and I just can't put up with it when you do that. If you want to continue to do that, I'm going to do this. And then he probably will test you, and you have to, if you set a boundary, you better follow it. or you'll have no
Right.
credibility. It's like with children. Those of us who've had kids know, if you say, if you do this again, I'm going to do this. If you don't follow through,
They're
they'll
going to
know
do it again.
Yeah, they'll know it's, you don't mean
And I
it.
like what you say about protecting your emotional well-being. I think that's a really key piece of advice, because part of this question here is about the other man, or the guy, but not as much of it is about what's happening to her. What is the result of some of these things, and what is it doing to her inside when he is getting drunk, or when he's getting high and he's acting this way? She's not protecting her emotional well-being, and putting that boundary up isn't just for him. It's to protect her. And I think that that's just so important. And a lot of us forget that we need to protect ourselves. And some women might handle this differently than her, and it's not that big of a deal, or they're used to it, or they just intuitively kind of just tune him out. But this is impacting her greatly.
But keep in mind too, that each of us, me especially, probably need to work on myself continually. And some of the things that we say are boundaries, not the thing about the drinking, maybe that we need to be a little bit more patient, maybe a little bit more mature. Maybe we want perfection from our guy, and we're probably not going to get it, not in this world. It's understanding what are fair and reasonable boundaries, and what is expecting him to just live in this home environment you've created, that you'll only be happy if it runs a certain way. And that's
Right.
it, because he also lives there.
All right. Well, I think we have some good takeaways. Thank you so much for all of the advice. I think this is really helpful. And thank you all out there. And thank you for your questions. And again, if you want to submit a question for our Monday mini Fascinating Womanhood videos, drop those into my mailbox or into Dixie's, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Next week. Bye.